So welcome everyone to this webinar organized by the Return to Work Policy and Practice Research Team. My name is Katherine Lippel. I am the moderator for today's webinar. I am also team lead for this research team that I will be presenting to you in this introductory period. Today's webinar is on work disability policy and practices, looking specifically at supporting the healthcare and mobility of injured and disabled workers. And the program for today is first the introduction that I'll be giving now, followed by Dr. Dana Howse, who will be speaking to the issues of transport, getting to work with a physical disability. And then we will be looking at Dr. Hudon's presentation on ethics, practices, and policies of healthcare and return to work for persons compensated following a work injury. So the way we're going to be doing this, and my role is much more housekeeping and introducing the team itself, but we're going to have my short presentation followed by the two presentations of Dana and Anne, which will each take 30-35 minutes. And then we have a question period. There are over 100 people registered for this webinar today. What we recommend, what is going to be happening is that you will be able to write your questions anytime in the question and answer box on your screen. And after both presentations, after Anne Hudon has finished, I will moderate the question period by reading out the questions so that everybody can hear the questions simultaneously. So please feel free to write in questions starting now and right through the webinar, and I will moderate those questions during the question period. And please note that because of the number of people registered, the way we run this program is that we do not authorize you to turn on your cameras, so we can't see you and we can't hear you. So please communicate with us through the question Q&A. The chat function will not normally be running, but our coordinator, Monique Lefebvre, will be posting information, for instance, our website and things like that. In that function, you can take a look. So this is the name of our team, Policy and Practice and Return to Work After a Work Injury, Challenging Circumstances and Innovative Solutions. And of course, we want to acknowledge our funders, both SSHRC and CIHR, who have generously funded us. We now know that we have this 5-year grant, so we'll be doing these webinars for a while. And there's several webinars that are already up on our websites if you've missed the previous ones. This is most of the members of the team, not everybody. So I am the principal investigator, Katherine Lippel at the University of Ottawa. Today's presenters are Anne Hudon, who is professor at Université de Montréal. I'll present her in a minute. As I will present Dana Howse, who is also part of the team, and the work she was doing was also done when she was a trainee under the auspices of this team as well. And you have the names of some of the other members of the team on the one hand, and of all our partners. And as you'll see, this is a team that has partners both in Quebec and in the rest of Canada. We do webinars and research in French and in English. Today's webinar is in English. We do have French webinars as well. And you have on the right-hand side of your screen the list of our partners who have participated in very generously in various ways in the research that we'll be presenting over the course of this webinar series. So what are we actually asking? Our overaction question, and this is a webinar based on 2 results of a much larger program, and the overarching question: how can Canadian public policies promote better practices to ensure sustainable return to work for all injured workers? So we're looking at the scope and effectiveness of regulated return to work policies and practices. I'm a lawyer by training, and the underpinnings of all the projects relate to the regulatory context in which the projects take place. Sometimes that's important to the researchers, but in all cases, I'm and the legal team and the trainees and the co-applicants who are legal scholars are watching the policies that are underpinning the results that we're hearing from the different researchers. So policies and practices in return to work. And Hudon today is particularly looking at issues in relation to the policies and practices. And the workers who we are interested in terms of the types of workers who are targeted by our research, we're looking at workers who are either in non-standard employment. So we've defined that as being temporary, on-call, part-time, and self-employed. Can be temp agency workers. It can also be workers who are engaged in employment-related geographic mobility. So somebody who has a high-paying job or a low-paying job, who travels for work at least 2 hours a day, but sometimes the fly-in, fly-out, drive-in, drive-out workers working in the north, or we have seafarers coming up in a future webinar where they are extremely mobile throughout their working lives. So that broad category of workers as well. And we're also interested in full-time minimum wage workers. Beyond that, we have projects that are targeting migrants or recent immigrants who are injured at work. And we also have projects that look at attempts to return to work after having suffered a mental health problem. And each of these themes is the object of a different stream of our research as such. Today's presentations, the legal underpinnings, and this is my only legal slide. I don't want to disappoint the law students who are in the audience, but it's always like this. It's important to understand what the legal context is in which these research projects are taking place. Take home message number one, jurisdiction matters, and that will become extremely clear. It's the focus of Hudon's presentation, where she's looking at the role of healthcare providers in 4 different jurisdictions. And we'll see that the results are very different because of the way the legislation shapes the roles of healthcare providers in those jurisdictions. For the most part, we're looking at workers' compensation legislation that underpins the interactions we're discussing, not exclusively, but in large part, because everybody we're looking for are people who are injured at work, whether or not they've actually claimed for compensation. And what people who are not specialized in the field need to know is that access to healthcare and physical rehabilitation supports are defined in the workers' compensation legislation. And as such, in many jurisdictions, workers have a broader access to healthcare than they would under Medicare and its limits. The other point that I will make in the context of workers' compensation is, as we speak, parliamentary debates are taking place on Bill 59 in Quebec, that if the minister sticks with what he was proposing, changes will change the results potentially of what Anne's study is looking at. So during the chat, if the question and answer period, if there are questions on that, we can return to that. But note that if you're not a legal scholar, realize that law is always changing. And just when you publish your article, the law it's based on has changed, and we're moving into another sphere of management of healthcare providers. That's sort of the reality that we're dealing with in this research project. Occupational rehabilitation and rights to reintegration of workers after work injury, return to work, varies between provinces, between jurisdictions. Often this is dictated by workers' compensation legislation. It's also, of course, governed by human rights legislation and the duty to accommodate. And today, in particular, I'm underlining in human rights legislation, equal access to public transport for people with physical disabilities. This is an important issue, and Dana Howse will be addressing not the legal issues, but the results of the experiences of the people she interviewed and the key informants in the context of access to public transport and access to mobility. And duty to accommodate at work is also an underpinning of much of what we are talking about throughout the research of our team. So just a plug for upcoming webinars, save the dates. Very soon, April 1st, we will be hearing from the mobility stream, return to work and mobile workers, seafarers, and other interjurisdictional workers, research by Dr. Desai Shan, who has devoted her research to seafarers, and Dr. Robert McPherson, who is a quantitative researcher who has been doing very interesting analyses on return to work timing and compared between different jurisdictions in Canada. And on May 18th, we will be having a webinar brought to us by people working on migrant and mobile workers looking at access to healthcare. Dr. Elise Thorburn, who is a medical doctor, has been focusing on access to healthcare for mobile workers. And Dr. Janet McLaughlin is working, leading or co-leading our stream on migrant workers and temporary foreign workers and their access to healthcare. We will be organizing most likely a webinar or two on the Bill 59 if it actually moves forward, and those will be in French. So if you're interested in developments in Quebec, read your email and we will be posting this information. If you've registered for this seminar today, you are on our mailing list. And of course you can opt out if you wish to be removed, but you will be hearing from us unless you write to Monique Lefebvre to say you don't want to be on the list. So the presenters today, Dr. Dana Howse is our first presenter. She conducted the work that she'll present today was she was a postdoctoral fellow at the CRWTP. She afterwards joined us as a postdoc, but her work really dovetails with the work we're doing here in our broader team. She completed her PhD in public health science at the Dalla Lana School of Public Health at U of T, and she studied injured workers' experiences with problematic compensation claims in the context of her doctorate. And she's currently a research associate with the primary healthcare research unit in the Faculty of Medicine at Memorial University. Dr. Anne Hudon is a physiotherapist and assistant professor at the School of Rehabilitation at Université de Montréal. She's a researcher at the Center for Interdisciplinary Research and Rehabilitation of Greater Montreal and with the Ethics Research Center, Le CRE. She finished her PhD in rehabilitation sciences at Université de Montréal on the ethics of physiotherapy care for injured workers, as well as postdoctoral training at the University of Waterloo with Dr. Ellen McEachen and at the University of Ottawa with myself on compensation policies in primary care. And this is my last slide. I have a few housekeeping messages. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we can't hear you, we can't see you. To share questions, please send a message in the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I will be moderating those questions at the end of the two presentations that are to follow. We will answer technical questions right through in a written format in the Q&A section or in the chat section. Monique Lefebvre will be following up on that with our technical advisors. If you have technical questions, please ask them as soon as you can. And please note that the webinar will be recorded and shared with everyone who registered for the event. Often we get questions about that. So yes, you will have access to the webinar. There is an evaluation of the webinar. Please look out for our evaluation in the email, and I believe they're going to be posting the link in the chat as well. The team's website can be accessed at the address that's here. This address will be posted in the chat so you can see it and copy it on, as you see fit. If you want to contact us, you have our email address right here. And I want to particularly thank Monique Lefebvre, our team coordinator, and the technicians who are supporting us. Michael, who is our site tech today at the University of Ottawa. We couldn't do any of this without this support. And I am really deeply grateful for our team, coordinator, publicist, and do everything, organizer Monique Lefebvre, and of course the tech team at the University of Ottawa. So without further ado, I'm going to close my screen and give the floor to Dana Howse. Thank you.